If love hurts this much, is it still love? I used to believe that love meant sacrifice, that real love meant enduring storms without complaint. That belief nearly broke me. My name is Linda Ember. I'm 30 years old, and once upon a time, I married a man I thought God sent to me. His name is Kelvin. We met in a strange and unexpected way. I was selling food items, eggs, tomatoes, dry pepper, and bags of gari at the Junction Market in Aba. It was one of those hot days when sweat clung to your skin like glue. He rushed past my table, his back swinging too wide, and before I could react, it knocked over a tray of ripe tomatoes, splattering some on the ground. I expected anger, maybe denial, but instead, he stopped, helped me gather what remained, and even offered to pay for the damage. He smiled and said, "I guess this is how God planned for us to meet." I laughed, not knowing how those words would echo in my future. After that day, he returned to my store regularly, sometimes to buy things he didn't even need, like 2 cups of rice or a bunch of dry plantain. Other times, just to talk. His presence was comforting, like a soft breeze after heat. Within months, he had won my heart, and within a year, I became his wife. At first, our marriage felt like a gift. Kelvin was loving, patient, and attentive. He helped me carry my goods, encouraged me to open a bigger store, and even prayed with me each night. I truly believed I had found peace. But everything changed when his mother, Mama Esther, moved in. And that's when the storm began. When Mama Esther arrived, I welcomed her with both hands and a bowed head. Kelvin told me weeks before that his mother would be coming to stay for just a while. I didn't question it. I wanted to be the kind of wife who respected elders and brought peace into her husband's home. From day one, I treated Mama Esther like royalty. I woke before dawn to prepare her breakfast, hot yam porridge or okra soup, depending on what she felt like. I served her before anyone else. I washed her clothes, ironed her wrappers, and made sure her room was always clean and fresh. I even rubbed her legs with balm at night when she complained of pain. Sometimes I asked myself why I was going this far. Kelvin was not rich. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom flat with plastic chairs and a small television. But I didn't care. I wasn't doing it for money. I just wanted to be accepted. I wanted her to see me as a good woman. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. She rarely smiled at me. When I entered the room, she would roll her eyes or suddenly grow quiet. Once, she looked me up and down and said, "You're beautiful, but your body looks too soft. Are you even strong enough to carry a baby?" That comment sank deep. Still, I told myself to ignore it. I believed respect would win her over. 4 years into our marriage, something shifted. It was subtle at first, almost unnoticeable. Kelvin stopped calling me my queen. He stopped laughing during our evening prayers. He started spending more time outside. Extra meetings, sudden visits to friends I had never heard of before. At dinner, he barely touched his food. I'd ask how his day went, and he just nod or shrug. He stopped meeting my eyes when we talked. Our bedroom, once filled with late-night whispers and soft kisses, became cold. We slept like strangers. I blamed stress at first. Maybe his work was hard. Maybe he was tired. I didn't want to assume the worst. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. As he lay beside me, staring at the ceiling, I whispered, "Kelvin, have I done something wrong?" He didn't answer at first. Then he stood up and walked to the window, arms folded. "This marriage is choking me," he said, without turning around. "I need space." My heart sank. "Space from what?" I asked, sitting up in bed. "Is this about the baby we don't have yet?" He turned sharply. "That's part of it. It's been 4 years, Linda. No child. My friends have kids already. 2, even 3. People are starting to ask questions. Even Mama is worried." But we agreed not to rush. I reminded him. We said we'd wait for God's time. He shook his head. That was then. Now I'm not even sure you can conceive. Maybe you're hiding something. That word, hiding, hit me like thunder. All I ever gave was honesty and love. And now, I was being accused of carrying a secret I didn't even know existed. That night, sleep abandoned me. I lay there staring at the ceiling, eyes wide, heart hollow. Hiding something? The words bounced inside my head like a curse. What did Kelvin mean? Was this really about a child? Or had someone whispered something into his ears? I remembered the way Mama Esther had been acting lately. The looks, the sharp words, the silence. My chest grew tight with suspicion. Something wasn't right. The next morning, I picked up my phone and dialed her number. My voice was calm and respectful. Good morning, Mama. I just wanted to check on you. How's your health? She coughed dramatically on the other end. I'm managing. This old body is tired. She paused. How is my son? He's fine, I said softly. It's just, we haven't really been seeing eye to eye. I don't know what I did wrong. There was silence on the line. Then she said something that made my heart fall. Some women are just unlucky, my dear. I warned my son not to marry a barren woman. He said love would provide. But love does not give children. Barren. That word from her mouth stung more than any slap. I swallowed hard, trying not to cry. Mama, have I ever disrespected you? Have I ever given you a reason to speak about me like this? I speak truth, she replied coldly. You're feeding me, yes, but you are starving my bloodline. Only God knows what you're hiding. I ended the call and dropped the phone on the floor. My hands trembled, my legs felt weak. So this was it. All the love I had poured into this family was being poured into a basket full of holes. The next morning, I took a bus to the hospital. I didn't tell Kelvin. I didn't want another argument. I just needed answers. Real answers. I had done tests before, but doubt was now eating me alive. What if something had changed? What if I really was the problem? The nurse was kind and spoke softly as she handed me the forms. After I completed the tests, the doctor invited me into his office. He had gentle eyes and a calm voice. Linda, he said, your results are ready. I held my breath. Your womb is healthy. Hormone levels are normal. Your eggs are fine. My heart skipped. Then why haven't I gotten pregnant? The doctor leaned forward. Do you know if your husband has ever done a fertility test? I blinked. No, he hasn't. He never thought he needed to. The doctor sighed. Because from what I'm seeing, you should have conceived by now. It may be time to check both sides. My knees weakened. So all this time, Kelvin never got tested. He just assumed the fault was mine. And Mama Esther, she believed it too. Or maybe she wanted to. Something in my chest, pain, confusion. I had carried this shame alone. I had endured whispers, stares, and accusations. For what? When I got home that night, I waited for Kelvin to return. He walked in smelling like perfume I didn't wear. I didn't ask questions. I just said calmly, Kelvin, I want us to do a fertility test together. He exploded. He called me names. You are the problem, not me. Go and work on yourself. He grabbed his car keys and stormed out. I sat alone, wiping silent tears. That's when I realized the worst kind of loneliness is the one you feel inside your own marriage. Weeks passed with silence so thick, it felt like a heavy blanket over my heart. Kelvin barely spoke to me. Mama Esther avoided me like I was a disease. I kept moving through the house like a ghost. Cooking, cleaning, praying. But the warmth was gone. There was no more us. Just me alone, clinging to a marriage that felt more like a cage. Then, one afternoon, my phone rang. It was Mama Esther. She said, Come to the village. Please. Kelvin is here. He's doing something dangerous. I can't stop him. I didn't ask questions. I packed a small bag and rushed to the bus stop, my heart pounding the whole way. What could be more dangerous than the silence we were already living in? When I arrived at the compound, nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. Kelvin was kneeling before a village shrine, beside a woman dressed in red wrapper and white chalk across her forehead. Mama Esther stood behind them, smiling like it was a wedding. A clay pot burned beside a tied goat. A priest chanted in a language older than time. The woman sat confidently next to my husband, like she belonged. I stood frozen. My slippers were dusty. My heart was louder than the drums behind the shrine. Mama, I whispered, stepping forward. What is this? She turned calm. You came quickly, she said, like I was late to a celebration. Better you see it with your eyes. Kelvin didn't look at me. His eyes were locked on the flames. The priest raised his voice, calling on the gods of fertility and purity to bless the union. Union? I staggered. What union? I took a step closer, my voice shaking. Kelvin, what is going on here? You're my husband. We're still married. What are you doing beside another woman at a shrine? He didn't flinch. He didn't blink. Then, slowly, he turned his head and looked at me. And I wished he hadn't. There was no love in his eyes. No guilt. Just emptiness. Linda, he said flatly, I need a child. And I'm tired of pretending. I can't wait anymore. I felt my knees wobble. My hands trembled. So this is your solution, I asked. To take another woman behind my back? To kneel before a shrine with her like I'm already dead to you? Mama Esther stepped forward, folding her arms. My son needs an heir. You've had 3 years and still nothing. I warned him not to marry you. Now he's correcting the mistake. Mistake. That word pierced my soul like a blade. I laughed. But it wasn't joy. It was pain. A broken, bitter laugh that made the villagers watching turn their heads. Mama, I said, how many times did I send you food? Do you know how often I starved just to make sure you had enough? All those cartons of dry fish, all those bags of rice. And this is what I get in return. She hissed. You were feeding me but starving our bloodline. I turned to Kelvin, desperate for even a flicker of hope. What happened to us? You never even agreed to a test. Why won't you check yourself? He scoffed. That's what women say when they want to shift the blame. I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. This is your test result, Kelvin. I paid for it behind your back. I threw the envelope at Kelvin's feet. He looked down at it, frowning. Mama Esther hissed loudly. What's this nonsense? You forged this, didn't you? No, Mama, I replied, holding back tears. It's real. I had Kelvin tested 3 months ago when he went for what he thought was a regular blood check. I paid extra for a full fertility test. These are the results, with the hospital seal and the doctor's signature. Kelvin bent down and picked up the envelope. I watched his fingers tremble as he pulled out the paper. His lips moved slowly, silently reading the report. I saw it. Just for a second, the flicker of fear. No sperm count, I said for him, my voice trembling. 0 motility. The doctor said it may have been that way since you were a teenager. Mama Esther grabbed the paper from him and squinted at it. Then she screamed, This is a lie. Witchcraft. You forged it. You want to destroy my son. I didn't, I replied quietly. I knew you wouldn't believe me. So I brought a second copy with the hospital seal and doctor's phone number. Call him. Kelvin said nothing. His hands fell limp at his sides. The woman beside him, the one he planned to marry at the shrine, stared at me like I had ruined her plan. So, I whispered, stepping closer. After everything you said about me, I was never the problem. The priest paused his chant and looked at me. Madam, leave this place. You are not part of this ritual. No, I said. I'm not. I was the wife, but not anymore. I turned and walked away. Dusty slippers, shattered heart and all. Weeks passed. Kelvin didn't call. Mama Esther didn't call. The woman from the shrine never appeared again. I stayed in my father's house, numb and broken. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I just sat there, staring at the ceiling, wondering how my life had come to this. Then one morning, a knock came at the door. It was the woman from the shrine, Ada. She was shaking, her eyes red from crying. Her hands trembled as she clutched her wrapper. I lost the baby, she said. I blinked. What baby? The one they said I was carrying for Kelvin. I lied, she whispered. I was never pregnant. Mama Esther paid me to say I was. My son was sick and I needed the money. I never thought it would go this far. I stood still, not knowing what to say. She fell to her knees. I'm sorry. Please, forgive me, but something is wrong with Kelvin. He's sick. Since that day at the shrine, he hasn't spoken. He just stares at the wall and trembles at night. Mama Esther says your name in her sleep. They say it's a curse, the priest warned them. A cold shiver ran through me. I remembered the priest's words. The gods will see the hands that twisted the truth, and maybe they had. I should have felt satisfied, but I didn't. There was no joy in seeing someone crumble under the weight of their own lies. I felt sorrow, deep aching sorrow, because everything I had built, every dream I nurtured, was reduced to ashes by the people I once called family. Then my phone rang. It was the hospital. Linda, the voice said, you need to come in. It's about your last test results. There's something we missed. The hospital line went dead, but the words kept ringing in my head. There's something we missed. I stood frozen in my father's compound, my phone still in my hand. I didn't want to assume the worst. I didn't want to cry, but my body was already trembling. The next morning, I dressed in silence and took the first bus to the hospital. My stomach twisted the entire way. At the front desk, the nurse avoided my eyes. The doctor is expecting you, she said quietly, leading me down the hallway. Dr. Edwin walked in, carrying a folder. He looked tired, apologetic. He sat opposite me and folded his hands. Linda, he began gently. First, I want to apologize. We value accuracy at this hospital, but sometimes human error slips through. My heart raced. Please, doctor, just tell me. He opened the file. Few months ago, when we ran your tests, your results were mistakenly switched with another patient. We just discovered the mix-up during an audit. I swallowed hard. So what does that mean? It means we missed something important, he said softly. You have fibroids, quite large ones. They've been growing near your fallopian tubes. They're the reason you haven't been able to conceive. I covered my mouth. The room began to spin. All this time, I whispered. You told me I was fine. You appeared fine, he said. Your body is strong and the condition is treatable. But we must begin immediately. You can still conceive, but we need to act early. I nodded slowly, tears falling before I could stop them. So I wasn't barren, but I wasn't okay either. And somehow, that truth hurt even more, because the shame I carried wasn't completely misplaced, just misunderstood. I left the hospital that day, feeling like a woman who had been peeled open, raw, exposed, and fragile. There was no more pretending, no more defending, no more hoping someone else would carry the blame. This was my truth now. Not a curse, not punishment, just a condition I had to face head on. I sat alone under a mango tree near the bus park, my hospital file clutched tightly against my chest. I didn't cry loudly. I didn't scream. I just let the tears fall quietly, soaking my wrapper like rain. And then, I breathed. For the first time in a long time, I let myself breathe without shame. The doctor said I could be treated, that I could still conceive. That word hope began to bloom again, cautiously, like a flower growing through cracked cement. When I got back home, I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Not my father. Not my sisters. I just sat in silence for days, thinking about all the times I had begged God to open my womb, all the times I blamed myself, all the times I tolerated insult from Mama Esther, even from Kelvin thinking I was the problem. And yet, I wasn't the only one. I decided I had cried enough. I folded up every photo from our wedding. I packed what little I had left in Kelvin's house. I sent a message through a neighbor to return the key. I was done begging to be loved. It was time to start again. This time, not as Kelvin's wife or Mama Esther's disappointment, but as Linda, the woman who finally chose herself. Days later, I returned to the house I once called my marital home, not to argue, not to fight, but to end things with my own voice. I didn't knock. I opened the door and stepped inside. The sitting room was quiet. The curtains were drawn and the air felt heavy, like a place where joy had long ago died. Mama Esther sat on the plastic chair, fanning herself with a folded newspaper. She froze when she saw me. "So, you're back?" she asked stiffly, her eyes narrowing. I didn't reply. I walked past her into the bedroom I once shared with her son. Kelvin sat on the edge of the bed, slouched forward. His clothes were wrinkled, his eyes were hollow. A thin line of drool slid from the corner of his mouth. He didn't move when I entered. He didn't blink. His hands trembled slightly. He looked like a man who had touched something too dark to ever be clean again. I sat across from him, calm, collected. "Your silence used to hurt me," I said softly. "But now I understand it. You were never strong enough to love me fully. You were never brave enough to protect me." He muttered something I couldn't hear. I leaned forward. "I came to say this to your face, Kelvin. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." He blinked, but said nothing. Mama Esther appeared at the door. "You think your forgiveness can change anything?" she barked. "No, Mama," I said, standing tall. "But you do. You need to pretend your son is still okay. You need to pretend you didn't plan this disaster with your own hands. But me, I'm done pretending." I dropped the house key on the table and walked out. The days turned to weeks. Weeks turned into months. I focused on healing, body, mind, and soul. I began fibroid treatment with a specialist in the town. The injections were painful. The side effects drained me. But every drop of medicine reminded me that I was still fighting for myself. I closed my small store in Aba and used my savings to open a new food shop on the outskirts of town. Nothing big, just a small space where nobody knew my name, where nobody looked at me like Kelvin's wife or the barren one. I rented a one-bedroom apartment. The walls were bare, the furniture simple, but it was mine. And in that space, I began to breathe freely for the first time in years. I started attending early morning mass again, not to ask for miracles, but to ask for peace. I joined a women's support group at a nearby clinic. We didn't talk about shame. We talked about survival, about healing, about becoming whole again. During a community outreach program organized by the group, I met someone. His name was Dr. Chinedu, a visiting fertility consultant from the nearby village. He was there to volunteer, offering free checkups for rural women. He didn't try to impress. He didn't flirt. He just talked to me like I mattered. We sat under a tree, passing time after the event. He asked me about my business, my health, my life. I told him little, just enough to keep the conversation going. He didn't press. Before he left, he said, "You're strong, Linda, but strength shouldn't mean suffering alone." That night, I thought about his words. And for the first time, I didn't cry myself to sleep. Chinedu didn't disappear after that first meeting. He came back 2 weeks later, this time bringing donated food supplies for our support group. We spoke again, longer this time. He told me about his life, a divorced man in his 40s. no children, no bitterness in his voice. We talked like old friends, no masks, no performance. The third time we met, he said something that caught me off guard. You don't need fixing, Linda. You just need someone who won't break you again. He didn't try to win me. He didn't force a connection. He simply offered his presence. And in that stillness, I began to feel safe. We started seeing each other more often. There were no promises, no labels, just two people learning how to exist without pain. He would visit my shop with fruit, sometimes sit silently as I arranged bags of gari and dried fish. I told him everything about Kelvin, Mama Esther, the shrine, the betrayal. He didn't flinch. He just held my hand and listened. There was something gentle in him, something kind. It wasn't love at first sight. It was healing in slow motion. After I completed my surgery and the doctor gave me the green light to try for conception, Chinedu and I became closer. We didn't rush. There were no expectations. But one thing led to another, and we became lovers. It wasn't about filling a void. It was about growing something new. For the first time in my life, I wasn't loving from a place of fear. I wasn't proving myself to be worthy. I was simply loved. Few months later, I missed my period. I took a test, then another. Positive. I sat on my bed, one hand on my stomach, the other over my mouth. My tears weren't from fear. They were from pure joy. I was going to be a mother. Me, Linda, the woman they once called barren, the woman who was never seen. Now carrying life. A new beginning had finally arrived. When I told Chinedu, he went silent for a moment. Then he placed both hands on my shoulders, looked me in the eye, and said, Linda, if you let me, I want to do this life with you. No fancy proposal, no ring in a wine glass, just raw, honest love. Months later, we had a simple traditional wedding in my father's compound. It rained gently, like a blessing washing away the past. Weeks after that, we said I do. Again in a small white wedding chapel, surrounded by people who prayed for us, not against us. Few months later, I gave birth to twins, a girl and boy. As I rocked them to sleep one evening, I whispered, you are the answers to our prayers. You came when I finally loved myself enough to let go. I thought about Mama, Esther, and Kelvin. I didn't hate them, I pitied them. The gods they trusted turned their lives into silence. Their cruelty cost them everything. But I had been restored. To every woman out there holding pain in her chest, wondering if she's enough, I see you. Please, stop begging for love in places where your heart is not safe. Stop feeding people who only starve your spirit. Choose yourself. Heal. The right love will come, not out of pity, not as a rescue mission, but as someone who sees your worth and holds it gently. I didn't become a mother because of a man's approval. I became a mother because I chose peace over chaos, healing over hate, and that choice made room for joy to find me.